How's it going, Starseekers? My name's Gotcake, and in this review we're going to be taking a look at Neon Abyss, a roguelike action platformer which sees you descending into the abyss and blasting your way through procedurally generated levels as you amass a multitude of trinkets in the hopes that you're powerful enough to face each run's final boss. Now before we start, don't forget to hit that like button if this review helps you out, and subscribe to the channel to be notified of future Switch indie game reviews uploaded every few days. So hitting the main menu, we can first quickly check out the game's options, within which we find gameplay settings containing language options and several toggles, including screen shake, rumble and aim assist, which you might find useful if it's your first time playing. The sound settings allow you to change the volumes of the game's sound effects and music, and we can check out the controller layout menu to see the game's controls, and we also have the option of rebinding a few of these buttons if we wish to do so. Back at the main menu, we can select one of 3 save slots, and then we can hit new game to get things underway. The game's opening shows our character talking to Hades, who has had his powers taken by Titan Group, the same group that destroyed your family. And so you strike a deal with Hades to become one of his fighters, and after drinking from the devil's cup, so to speak, we tumble downward into the abyss and into the game's tutorial. Here we learn that we move our character with the left analog stick, and we can jump by pressing ZL. We can also use the blue glowing jump pads to bounce us upwards, and we can descend through platforms and jump pads by holding down on the left thumbstick. Next we learn how to shoot, which we do automatically when aiming using our right thumbstick, and we blast through some barrels into the next room, which we get locked in. This occurs whenever we enter a room that contains enemies, and we have to defeat all the enemies before the doors unlock and we can move on. In the next room we find our first new weapon called Turret, which we swap out for our current weapon. The game features a ton of different weapons, each with their own projectile pattern, and each weapon you pick up comes with one of several passive abilities or active abilities which usually cost crystals to use. Our current number of carried crystals is seen in the top left below our heart containers, and the number of crystals with lighter centres indicates the activation cost of the ability. This ability creates a balloon granting us flight in the current room, and we can float up to the golden chest above us, which requires a key to open. Our current number of keys, bombs and gold are seen in the bottom left, and upon opening the chest we find some crystals, a bomb and a coin. Moving into the next room we're given several additional bombs, which we can use to destroy these grey bricks, though getting too close to an explosion will damage us. In the next room we find some eggs which float behind us, and defeating enemies in rooms will eventually cause these eggs to hatch. Sometimes hatching fails and they contain nothing, but often you'll get a random minion, and there are many different minions in the game. There are support minions like the blue baby, which picks up heart containers, sometimes swapping them for shields which act as temporary additional health, offensive minions which fire various types of projectiles at nearby enemies, or minions which orbit around you which can block enemy projectiles or damage nearby enemies. Minions are able to evolve into more powerful versions, and they also have their own health meter, and when they die they sometimes trigger a special ability. The tutorial also teaches us how to fast travel by first activating these grey floating runes to teleport to another room with an active crystal by selecting it on the map. Our final challenge of the tutorial is to defeat the end of floor boss, George, the god of pills. Now floor bosses are selected at random and each come with their own distinct movesets. The boss's health bar is seen at the top of the screen, and once a boss reaches half health it'll enrage, becoming more aggressive and gaining some new attacks. Following the defeat of a boss it'll drop a random item, and all of the bosses outside of the tutorial also drop a faith gem which we'll get onto shortly. The item that George dropped was a drilling warhead, which increases our rate of fire and weapon damage, but the game features a huge number of different items to make our character more powerful. These items can be ones which increase our stats such as weapon damage, fire rate, bullet velocity, movement speed or jump height, others which affect our projectiles such as causing them to explode or have a chance to fire special bullets like heat-seeking rockets, or those which grant us additional heart containers or passive abilities such as flight or double jump. The effects of every item you collect also stack, so you can end up with some extremely powerful combinations, and you can see all your carried items and their effects from within the pause menu. So following our defeat of the boss we get to continue onward through the portal to the next level, but after fighting our way through a few rooms we eventually lose all of our health and are defeated. We then end up in the game's hub, the Neon Abyss. Here we can switch up the game's difficulty between easy, normal and hard, or switch between the playable characters, of which we only currently have 2 unlocked. Each character starts with a different number of heart containers, keys and bombs, and most of them also come with a special ability, such as Matt, who can perform a roll maneuver. We can also now speak to the barmaid here and spend our faith gems to unlock icons laid out in a skill tree format, with each unlock requiring a different number of gems. These unlocks can grant new characters for us to play as, or add additional items to the Abyss's item pool, which we also get to try out for free in our first run after unlocking them. They can also unlock new Abyss features, such as adding new room types to the dungeon, like a secret room hidden in each level, or the piano room where we get to play a minigame by bouncing on piano keys. Or they can add additional gameplay features like marked blocks which contain items when destroyed, or mouldy hearts which either heal or damage you when collected. So when we're ready for another run, we can once more jump down into the Abyss. Now every run in the game is generated from a seed, and this determines the items we find, room and enemy layouts and bosses. We have a mini-map to help us navigate the dungeons seen in the top right corner, and we can take a look at the full map by hitting the minus button. Our current seed can be found in the pause menu, and we can input this seed into a machine in the bar to replay the same level layout and even share the seed with other players. As we get to running through the various dungeon layouts, we begin to encounter new features not covered in the tutorial. Firstly, we find a number of different doors, such as ones we need to destroy with grenades, golden doors which lead to rooms containing additional items, purple doors which require crystals to open them, or slot machine doors which cost us coins and only open if we get lucky. There are also some additional chests, such as stone ones which we need to use a bomb to open, and purple ones which again require crystals to open. Another important feature in the game is the wisdom and violence mechanic, and the easiest way to trigger this is with large purple crystals which appear in some rooms. Activating these by using a crystal will make the wisdom meter appear in the bottom right, and we can then fill this wisdom bar by completing rooms without taking hits or activating purple chests or doors. Once full, this will then make a wisdom room appear on the map, which we can then teleport to and get to select from 2 items for free. The violence meter on the other hand can be activated by shooting a purple crystal, door or chest, which will then corrupt them, turning them red. We then simply touch them to sacrifice some health, and a red violence meter will appear instead. This bar is much easier to fill and we just need to take damage, and once filled a different secret room will appear that we can then teleport to. In this room we'll find an altar, and similar to the devil deals in Binding of Isaac, we need to sacrifice a heart container and permanently reduce our health. We then get to select from one of several items that appear. Each level in the Abyss also contains a shop where we can spend the coins we've earned on new weapons or items. So working through each of the Abyss levels, we find new weapons, collect items and eggs, and defeat each level boss, earning us additional faith gems. Once we reach the final level of the Abyss and reach its final boss room, we then get to face the manager of this Abyss, who is one of the Titan group. These final battles tend to be much tougher than standard boss battles, with the bosses using more complex attack patterns which are harder to avoid. Once you defeat a manager, you then enter a final portal which will end your run, and you'll then unlock the next manager, who will appear at the end of the next Abyss, which will also now contain an additional level. So this covers the general gameplay loop of Neon Abyss. You enter a dungeon, battle through its bosses collecting faith gems to unlock new features to enhance subsequent runs of the dungeon. So how did I find my gameplay experience with Neon Abyss? Well, I'll start by saying that to me this is the type of game I was expecting Exit the Gungeon to be. It ticks all the right boxes in terms of gameplay mechanics, weapon and item synergies, randomly generated dungeon layouts, enemies and bosses. I also really like the visuals of the game with its stylish and detailed pixel aesthetics, with some great looking sprites for both enemies and bosses. Though I rarely mention music in the games that I review, I also appreciate the thumping electronica soundtrack in the game. Now I also really enjoyed the item synergy in the game and trying out different combinations, seeing how they visually affected my character. But I have to say that a few items really tip the scales in making you feel overpowered. To give 2 examples, firstly there's the popcorn item which makes your bullets explode, and this absolutely decimates every enemy it hits, making most rooms trivial. The second items are ones that grant you permanent flight, and these allow you to avoid most enemies in rooms and keep out of range of most of the boss's attacks. When it comes to enemies and bosses, there's some great variation, and bosses provide a decent challenge, though I would say that the bosses, and in fact the game in general, is much easier than other roguelikes such as Enter the Gungeon or Binding of Isaac, at least from my experience on normal difficulty. One final highlight for me was the skill tree unlock system, and I thought it was utilised really cleverly to evolve the dungeon, but I did find things start off a little slow until you get a few of them unlocked. Now, touching on the few negatives I have about the game, I first want to point out the lack of a dodge mechanic. You can gain a couple of passives, and Matt does have a roll ability, but I thought that the game could have benefited from a dodge button with iframes to deal with some of the trickier bosses. My second point is with frame rate issues on the Switch version of the game. Though it didn't happen often, there were times when things slowed down considerably, usually when things got very busy and mainly in boss battles. Overall, I think the Neon Abyss is a great roguelike with a lot of different mechanics that all work really well together to form an extremely enjoyable gameplay experience. So now we come to rating the game. Now I rate games between 1 and 5 stars, with a shovelware stamp of approval reserved for the worst games on the eShop. This rating is based on my own personal opinion on what games have to offer in terms of gameplay and value for money to potential buyers. And for a rating I'd give Neon Abyss 4 out of 5 stars. It's an all-round fantastic roguelike, which I would gladly list among the best roguelikes out there, and its gameplay loop and multitude of unlocks will no doubt keep you hooked playing for many hours. You can get the game from the UK Switch eStore for £15.99, or from the US eStore for $19.99. Alternatively, it's also available on Steam, Xbox One and PlayStation 4. And that's it for this review of Neon Abyss. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments section below. As always, hit that like button if it helped you out, subscribe to the channel for future Switch indie game reviews, and join the Starseekers Discord to chat with our growing community. For now though, I just want to say thanks once again for watching, and until next time, game on.